welcome. I'm Callie. I'm a teacher here at the practice. And this is Finding the Quiet. This is a presentation about the tradition's tools that we can use to support mental health and well-being. So I've struggled with depression and anxiety all of my life in varying degrees, from kind of more mild and moderate even to acute and debilitating at times. And it's taken me a long time to get to the point where I felt really comfortable having open and honest conversations around it, and to really owning it as part of my journey, my inner journey, and a really important piece of inner work that I carry with me and I continue to move through life with. And I think having these conversations around mental health and well-being is so important. Now more than ever, with the pace that our world moves at, with the rise of technology and our emphasis on it for just culturally and in the workplace, and the amount of input and information coming at us at all times is ever increasing. And as a society, we face a whole host of different matters and concerns around us all the time, and socially and politically, economically, environmentally. We juggle many roles, out in our own lives. We're family members and community members. We're partners and friends, and we're also, unique and complex individuals. And so, with all of the different identities that we hold and all that we navigate out in the world around us, with all of the waves that we experience, it becomes quite natural to get swept up in them. And I think it's such a common experience to have stress and mental fatigue and overwhelm as part of your experience. And I think that probably most of us have had that experience at some point or another, and many of us probably even chronically or on an ongoing basis from time to time. So I think it's really wonderful to be able to look at mental health and be able to freely talk about it, and have it be something that's in the collective conscious sphere of conversation. So I became a teacher of yoga because I fell in love with being a student of yoga. Yoga, like nothing that I had encountered before, really transformed my life. So in many ways, it really enhanced my perspective of who and what I was, and my role and experience of the world around me. And I think one of the most significant ways that I've experienced transformation through my own practice is that yoga has really given me a really powerful context to start to build up my own inner relationship and start to work with and steady and stabilize my mind. And so it's my intention tonight to kind of share with you just a bit about what I've learned around the wealth of tools and techniques that this tradition has to offer us to calm and quiet the mind, and to help us find our own inner harmony and balance. And I hope that each of you will go home with at least a few different insights or bits of information or nuggets of contemplation that can be useful. So, sorry, slide. Yes. So, why yoga? I think that there are many different ways in the modern world that yoga has come to kind of manifest or express itself, and it's useful to begin this conversation to talk about what yoga is sort of more completely and for our intents and purposes. And so really, traditionally speaking, at its roots, yoga is an ancient and intricate system that dates back thousands of years. It's was developed out of deep and profound experiential wisdom, and has remained relevant and time-tested across centuries. And what we've leaned into heavily in modern day expressions is the physical part of our practice, but what yoga really is at its core and fundamentally is exponentially more vast and complex than just what we do with our bodies. It's really a whole system and a science that's designed to guide us towards inner harmony and balance, and to help us to connect to that greater collective consciousness of which we're all a part. And, as such, yoga really offers us a wealth of tools and techniques that can help us build and enhance our capacity to calm the nervous system and to cope with life stressors, and really as well to deepen our relationship with ourselves and our capacities to explore and to grow and to learn and self-heal. So finding inner harmony and balance necessitates that we enhance and deepen our relationship with ourselves. Yoga is a context that we can really explore and attend to the inner world. We can enhance our relationship with the phenomena of the inner landscape. So it's not, fully possible to be both externally attentive and internally attentive at the same time. And the momentum and the stimulation of the world around us and just the demands of daily life make it quite natural and easy to do the former. But we really kind of need to make a more conscious effort to do the latter, to really attend and devote our energy into that internal sphere. So, as we cultivate a more subtle practice by focusing on breathing and on sensation, on subtle tools and presence, we tap into that connection that we have between the emotional and the physical bodies. And so, in this we enhance what we call our somatic awareness. So somatic awareness is our attunement to our inner felt sense. It's our sense of what we're feeling and what we're experiencing. And as our somatic awareness grows, we enhance the degree to which we're in tune with what we're feeling. And the more that we have access to what we're feeling, the more we have the ability to kind of work with it and to shift and to change it. And so these are just a few images that kind of illustrate the really deep and profound connection that, what we're feeling and what we're experiencing emotionally, the way that really permeates through all realms of our being. And so these are images from a book called Emotional Anatomy, The Structure of Experience. It was published in 1985 by Stanley Kellerman, who is the director of Berkeley Center for Energetic Studies. And with this book, Kellerman aimed to map the geometry of the human consciousness based on the premise that physical and human shape is really closely interrelated to one's emotional and psychological reality. And so the first image kind of outlines the progression of postural responses to stress and to threat. And the second image is a depiction of how the body's pouches, so kind of referring to the organs, how those kind of move and shift in response to our fluctuation between contraction or expansion, and how long term the way that we respond to stress in that accordion type of way, the way that kind of manifests as long term holding patterns in the body. So just kind of an interesting thing to think about when we think about how we hold our bodies, where we carry tension. All of that is really, really closely related to what's going on internally and emotionally. These are a couple of definitions around soma and somatic awareness that I really love from the Center of Somatic Studies. So soma is a process of doing and being rather than an abstract entity. So in other words, soma is a living process by which our bodily sensations, our movements, perceptions, and emotions and thoughts form a whole of experience. And then somatic study is therefore an inquiry into our lived body. So by observing and exploring ourselves through sensing and moving, it's simply and most profoundly the study of how human embodied experience unfolds. The memories, feeling, emotion all live and are stored within the tissues of our bodies. And when we empower ourselves when we begin to connect physical experience with, our emotional and psychological realities. In our practice, we tap into that physical and emotional connection by focusing on breathing, on the sensations we're feeling, and on inner experience moment to moment. And you discover what happens when the breath and the body are shifted and altered, and how that can impact our physical and mental experience. We start to notice things like the indication of emotional experience. Like, am I defensive? Am I triggered? What's going on? What's happening? We start to notice too, what we're carrying and what's stored up. So when we spend time opening up and easing the body, quite often we start to unlock or start to access stored emotions or memories that have been tucked away. And when that happens, our job becomes not to push those things away or to turn away from them, but to start to show up for them, to get curious about what's happening and to observe them compassionately and objectively. And we start as well to come to know and experience just the transitory nature of sensation. And so, we start to realize and learn in our bodies that each experience, each sensation comes and goes. And as we witness ever-changing phenomena, we deepen our relationship with that steady and unchanging piece of us that gets to witness everything unfold. And as we do that in our practice on the mat over and over again, we take that same ability out with us into the world. And that's really, really quite empowering for our sense of steadiness and our backbone, our pillar, our anchor that exists within us. So having somatic awareness, that inner felt sense, increases our emotional awareness and intelligence, and it allows us to explore and to work with what's stored within our physical, mental, and emotional bodies. So yoga really gives us an arena to explore our personal relationship with really meaningful and important contemplations and ideas and concepts, and kind of flesh out and build upon those relationships. So things like the connection between the body and the mind, and our relationship to discomfort, and our ability to engage and to be present with what's happening in the here and now. As we explore these things, we really enhance the degree to which we feel and experience our own mental steadiness, and we also cultivate our, build up our ability to be non-reactive. So in this exploration, our practice becomes sort of an exploration of inner terrain. And so we start to, in looking at the mind and body connection, we start to, explore, what does a relaxed body feel like? What's happening as I hold this pose for 3 minutes? What's going on with my body? What's going on with my mind? Or when I'm coming into this balancing pose, how is my anxiety around coming into this pose affecting my ability to hold it and to remain steady? When we become more and more attuned and aware of the interplay between mental and physical experience, and the way that shifting one impacts the other. So really noticing how we feel enables us to become more able to regulate our emotional and our physical responses. So over time, as we explore, we start to become able to create change in the way that we respond and react to what's happening. And we, as well in all of this, start to understand ourselves as something that is separate from physical and mental phenomena, something and someone that has agency, has the choice in how we choose to respond. And in the realm of discomfort, what we're really looking at is enhancing our ability to coexist with it gracefully. So, the idea is, can I learn to tolerate what was, for me, previously intolerable? Can I come up against this uncomfortable sensation, or the instinct to escape this pose or this moment, or what's coming up mentally for me? Rather than walking away from that or escaping it with more movement, can I be here? And can I sit with these things? Can I allow them to be just as they are, and come to believe that, one, they'll pass and we'll move beyond them, and two, that I am a steady experiencer that can remain steady and, in my own essence, regardless of this external stuff that's happening. That will come and that will go. And in presence, we really start to train ourselves to keep returning, to coming back to the present moment. So as we align the orientation of our focus more and more with the here and now, we decrease the mental momentum that can get built up around the past and the future. So when we're focused on what's already happened, we don't anymore have the ability to change what's already happened. And so that kind of naturally creates a loop where all we can really do around that is spin. And it's kind of the same with what is to come. There's too many unknowns, and there's no ability that we have right here and right now to change what is happening in the future. So that too creates just a loop and a movement that we can just kind of become sucked into. And as we continue to practice coming back to what's happening now, what we do have the ability to shape and to shift and to control and engage with, then we put energy into that which we have power to create, and take it out of what's out of our realm of control, and in that we decrease our mental clutter. So when we've become able to see our stuff, so our thought patterns and beliefs, our triggers, we've cultivated the ability to come up against them with less instinctual and unconscious reaction, then we can start to dig into the deeper patterning of the brain. And we can begin from that standpoint to deconstruct and to reconstruct ways of thinking and being. So, we come to that place where we see how we might instinctually react or how we want to react. And we start to move into the realm of, how can I choose to react? Or can I choose to not react? Can I choose to just be here in this moment and to allow it to be just as it is? So the progression, looks kind of like this nice stacked flow chart that I've created here, but it's worth mentioning that this thing that we're talking about isn't necessarily a smooth and simple progression as this nice little flow chart might suggest. It really does involve committed practice and introspection. It involves reflection and the willingness to go dig deep and to unpack things that can be painful and can be uncomfortable. And in this, for me, guidance and external support have been invaluable. So I've worked with my teachers over a long period of time on cultivating and shifting my practice, and I've worked for many years as well with counselors and therapists and with coaches. And I believe that having that external source of guidance and somebody to reflect back to you can be really useful and crucial. But I also believe that ultimately, each of our journeys is uniquely our own, and we are the ones that live in our inner experience, and we're the ones that create the patterning of the mind, and the way that we use it impacts the structure of our brain. So it's really the onus comes onto us to do that work and to know what our experience is, and to know the changes that we'd like to make, and to take the responsibility for making that happen. And I think that having a regular yoga and meditation practice for me has enabled me to cultivate the self-awareness that I needed to really progress and to break down both the conscious and unconscious defenses that I had around this stuff. And getting into this practice, into this inner journey, has enabled me to work in the realm of depth necessary to really get to the roots of some of this stuff. So I think that it's one thing to be intellectually aware of what work there is to do, and it's another to really work within that realm experientially. And for me, this is yoga. Yoga is an arena for gaining that experiential learning and understanding. It's really a space where we can develop our own self-wisdom. So, when we're not in touch with the phenomena of the inner world, this can, kind of have repercussions on the way that our whole being kind of functions and operates. Emotions and feelings, just like everything else, are energy. And when they're suppressed or unseen and therefore unexpressed, they still continue to live within us, and they manifest in different ways. So, physically, they can manifest as ways that we hold our body, chronic tension or tightness, fatigue. It can also manifest as, ailments. So, it's kind of a common association of having, stress or a wound up mind and having digestive or belly issues. It can also be headaches, high blood pressure. All of those things can be, manifestations of having stuff going on internally that we're not in tune with and we're not addressing. And, this can manifest as patterns of thinking or belief systems, such as our likes and dislikes, or our preferences, our inclinations or disinclinations. So, example of this would be maybe, like, I hate that activity. I hate dancing. And underneath that might be probably something like, when I was in that activity at one time, I experienced the intense discomfort of feeling really vulnerable. Or one time when I was doing that activity, something painful happened to me, or something embarrassing, something that I had shame around. And so when we start to notice the layers underneath, these kind of preferences and patterns, these layers can clue us into deeper truths about ourselves. And let's see there we go. Another thing that can happen when we're not in tune with what's going on in the inner world is we can start to attach significance to the symptoms rather than the causes of what's going on. I think it's common in the language that we use to say things like, I am anxious, or I am an angry person, or a stressed person, or I have a need for control, or I need things to be perfect all of the time. And underlying statements like this, experiences like this, are layers and layers of memory or experience, things that might be painful, or memories, even trauma, that we've cultivated responses to and efforts towards perhaps self-preservation or protection at one point. These behavioral patterns may have been useful to us at a certain time, but when they go unconscious, sometimes we carry them out for longer than they're useful, and they kind of develop a life of their own, and they get a momentum that kind of outruns its usefulness. And so, navigating things like chronic stress and anxiety necessitate the ability to peel back these layers and really get to the roots of stuff. So I kind of like to think about this idea as weeding a garden. If you see weeds in your garden and you pop over and you pluck out the greens, it'll be gone and you won't see it, and that'll be awesome for 2 days. And then those weeds pop back up, and they'll continue to pop back up over and over again. To make them not do that anymore, we've got to go pick up some tools. We've got to get into the dirt and dig out the roots, and that's how we make that really lasting change in our garden. And it's kind of that way with the stuff that we carry, the way that those thinking patterns kind of manifest over and over again. We've got to really dig into the deeper layers. So when we're constantly externally engaged and in momentum, we miss out on some of this inner phenomena. So I like to think about that experience of when you're on the go for like 3 or 4 hours at a time, and you've got this meeting, and then you meet this person, and then you've got to pick this thing up, and then there's the laundry to grab, and then you've got to let in the housekeeper, and all of a sudden these things add up, and you're from one thing to the next, and then you take a pause finally after like 2 or 3 hours, and you're like, I'm starving, or you're like, man, I really have to pee. So one of those kind of like things that sneaks up on you. It can be kind of like that with the inner world. So when we're in a space of external and momentum and engagement constantly, we miss out on a lot of what's happening in the quieter, more subtle realm. And when we're tuned into the outside fully, we just can't simultaneously be tuned into what's happening in the inside. Each of us is a complex being that exists in many, many layers, ranging from the gross, so, the outermost physical body, all the way down to our most subtle, which yoga tells us is pure awareness and consciousness, is, our unchanging and steadfast nature. And when we're always externalized, we miss more, not only, more subtle physical sensation, but we also even deeper miss out on the energetic and emotional realities that are very much alive in each of us. And so, yoga is an arena where we can kind of make that transition and make that conscious effort to move from the outside into the inside and to start to work with that stuff. So yoga gives us the space and the tools to start to transition out of externalization and move into the inner world. And we have a whole host of tools at our disposal in the practice of yoga. But three of the big guys that we'll talk about tonight are our breath, our intentional asana, so using postures mindfully, and meditation. So the breath. The breath and the mind are intimately connected. The breath responds to, the way that we're engaging in activity and the state of our mind constantly. It becomes more shallow if we're tense or we're nervous. It becomes longer and relaxed if we're calm and at ease. And in the same way that the breath responds to the way that we're engaging what's happening in our minds, we can flip that equation and we can use the breath consciously to create intentional responses in the body and in the state of our minds. The breath as well is a unique bodily function that can be both a conscious and an unconscious and a conscious activity. And so the practice of pranayama, in the interplay between the unconscious realm of our mind and that which is conscious and, in the realm of our awareness, in moving between those two spaces, we kind of get access into the deeper layers of the mind, and we start to become able to bring to light some of what might have been previously unknown or unconscious to us, and, bring it into the conscious mind so that we can then work with it in that space. So, witnessing the breath. So, I'm sure if you've taken at least a yoga class or two, you've probably heard at one point the cue to watch your breath moving, or to experience the breath moving through you. And what does that do? So, it does for us, many things. But one of the main things that it does is it attunes us to the now. So, the breath uniquely responds to each and every moment. Our breath cycle that we're currently experiencing is not like the one we had previously, and it won't be like the one we will have after this. And our breath responds to, our state of mind, our experience in the here and now. And so when we're watching it, when we're witnessing it, when we're working with it, we're quite literally absorbed in the present moment. And the breath also works to draw our attention into the internal sphere. So, we start to more intentionally inhabit our bodies as we consciously breathe. And beyond that, we really attune to and become present with subtle experience. So becoming more aware of the way that we're breathing brings insight into the way that our body is functioning and the way that we think and we feel and we perceive. This is kind of a nice little map that I found that talks about the breath, and I like the idea of talking about this stuff just as we train the body. It's it makes sense that we have to practice, we have to build up strength and work over time to build up bodily strength and endurance, and it's just the same with working with the mind and with something like the breath. And so when we have a point of awareness or an anchor, such as our breath, our mind inevitably starts to wander always. It's the nature of the mind to move about and to engage. It's what it does. So, when we come to a wandering mind and we rest on a thought, our job is to not avoid thoughts happening. They always will. Our job is to not let that thought become a spinning loop and to practice coming back. So returning to our anchor, the anchor of our breath. And as we practice that over time, continuing to come back to what's happening now, we start to less instinctually feed those loops, those patterns of thinkings that can get us carried away and can manifest as mental turmoil or emotional stress or overwhelm. As we keep practicing coming back to the now, those things lose power in their ability to kind of consume us. So a few minutes on scientific nerdy language stuff. Bear with me. Breathing scientifically. So breathing is crucial to our health and to the proper functioning of our entire being. So, breathing and proper breathing is critical for the oxygenation of our cells, for the detoxification of our body. It allows our digestive system to function and allows us to assimilate our food. It's responsible for our ability to release carbon dioxide and other gases from the body. Getting oxygen to the brain and the mind is critical, and when left unconscious, as we move through go mode in a lot of our lives, the breath, can often become more shallow and irregular than is optimum. And as well, in unconscious breathing, the exhale often does not get fully utilized. So this can cause the elasticity or the stretchiness of the lungs to become inhibited. And it can also cause carbon dioxide buildup in the lungs and limit our oxygen intake. So that will obviously inhibit our functioning, but it also impacts the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system is that which is in charge of essentially body functions that we don't have to think about. So the autonomic nervous system governs things like digestion, our metabolic process, our body temperature, our blood pressure. And in that system, we have two branches. So we've got our sympathetic system, or branch, and that's responsible for our go mode. Think about gearing up for exertion or, kind of taking action and handling something. And on the other hand, we have our parasympathetic nervous system, and that's kind of more oriented around chill mode. So it decreases our heart rate and our blood pressure. It kind of, reduces, it's responsible for preparing the body for rest and recovery, for digestion and sleep. And, the stimulation of each branch occurs without our conscious awareness, just by, the activities that we're engaging in, the way that we're engaging in those activities. So, calmly and at ease or a little bit more intensely. And also the way that we're thinking. So if our mental process is stressful or more peaceful, that's going to, dictate where we lean. And often when we have really busy lives and busy minds, this leans us too heavy into the sympathetic nervous system sphere. So when we work intentionally with breath, we can actually voluntarily start to regulate the autonomic nervous system. The inhalation emphasizes sympathetic activity. And then the exhale emphasizes the parasympathetic activity that we're in. And so by adjusting the ratio of one over the other, we can start to skew ourselves in the direction of one system over the other. So the exhalation. When we shift our exhale to be longer than our inhale, we start to move towards more mental ease and relaxation by extending the period of parasympathetic activity in each breath cycle. So we decrease nerve activity in the sympathetic nervous system and increase the influence of the parasympathetic nervous system, and that's what regulates our relaxation response. And then, yoga speaking, as we focus on the exhalation, this kind of enhances or, mobilizes specific expressions of energy, which are more grounding and calming and stabilizing. So, that which grounds us and allows us to eliminate and to let go. And then as well, the expression of energy that's responsible for more balancing and stabilizing, for equalizing and processing. So, all of those kind of steadying and calming kind of goals are oriented around the exhalation. And we have a few other breathing techniques that we have many, but a few that we can really focus on when it comes to working with the mind. So diaphragmatic or abdominal breath is a technique where you breathe into the lower regions of the lungs. So you can focus on the navel expanding and contracting as you fill the lower lungs, which causes the diaphragm to contract. And that has a really calming and steadying effect. It's grounding for the mind, and it's also beneficial for oxygen exchange in that it allows us to really fully release the gases from our lungs so that we can intake new oxygen. Nadi Shodhana, or alternate nostril breathing, is another one. So that's really balancing for right and left hemispheres of brain, and calming and steadying, a really nice one to work with to kind of come back to center. And we have Mahat Yoga Pranayama, or complete deep breathing, and it's a technique where we fill up the full capacity of our lungs stage by stage, or step by step. So lower, mid, and upper lungs intake, and then the same way, lower, mid, and upper lungs release. It's really healing and grounding, and it's also just a really great way to improve our lungs' ability to function and to fully expand and contract as we breathe. So when it comes to asana, not all yoga postures are designed to guide us towards mental steadiness. And when we're practicing, it's important always to know what our intention is behind what we're practicing. What our goals are for practice. And when we're working with the realm of calming and quieting the mind, we're really looking in the sphere of moon practice. So lunar practice is really all about calm and steadiness and refining our relationship with the mind. It's structured to help us become more calm and stable, more receptive and perceptive. So we work with postures that are more internalizing and grounding. So focus and emphasis on on forward folds and twists. So those are internalizing and grounding, and forward folds build an expression of energy that we call apanavayu, which is a downward moving and gravitational expression of energy. And it's really grounding and allows us, is responsible for that letting go and eliminating action. And twists build what we call in yoga the samanavayu, or our expression of energy that's internalizing and balancing and equalizing, really centering. And so we couple the physical techniques of working and emphasizing these postures with extended exhalations, intentional breath, and also tools like bandhas and mantra and mudra. And when we orient our practice all together in that way, it becomes quite powerful arena to really, really steady and get this thing quiet. I think it's just as important to think about how we're practicing as it is to think about what we're practicing. So when we're working through our physical practice, we want to really orient ourselves around finding stillness and focus. So pumping the brakes on momentum. If we continue to spin, so too will our minds. We have to cultivate the ability to remain present and internally attentive, and to sit with whatever arises. The thing about stress and anxiety and the functioning of our minds is that we can't outrun them. We can't outrun those things. And our only strategy is to really stop moving, to turn around and to face them head on. And finding stillness and having that ability to sit with what comes up and be present and compassionate with it is how we do that. And life demands that our attention be stretched and distributed between a number of tasks and responsibilities through much of our day, every day. And one of the ways that I think we can really soothe an anxious brain is to reduce mental dispersal caused by focusing on too many things at one time. It's unlikely that we have the ability to stop our mind's activity on command. If any of you do, let me know, because I'd love to know your secret. when it's the nature of the mind to move, yeah, and it does all day. And so, a better strategy is to train it to focus its energies more single pointedly, and thereby, clear out mental clutter. And so, this idea of starting to reduce mental dispersal by zoning in on a point of focus and attention is really built into the methods of this tradition of practice. So we have subtle tools like counted breath, like mudra and bandhas and mantra work, which not only direct our attention and to keep us present, but also shift our mental landscape and mentally and energetically align us with something of a higher vibration, of an orientation that we want to gear ourselves towards. And also, as we're practicing, we want to really emphasize and focus on cultivating ease. So when we practice and move through our lives in the world, we can ask ourselves, can I bring ease to this moment no matter what this moment is bringing me? And if we do that over and over again, not only in our practice but out in the world, that gives us a pillar of stability and inner steadiness that, if we can carry that with us, then that's a nugget of gold that will completely shift and transform the way that we can move through the world. Meditation. Meditation is where so much of this work lies. So the path inward into stillness and exploration of all of these things really begins with our awareness, our physical practice, but it finds the most depth and potency in the context of meditation, for sure. Meditation is actively training the mind to increase awareness and to expand our consciousness. So it's got a whole host of benefits. It enhances our emotional awareness. It increases our ability to focus, to concentrate. It lengthens our attention spans. And numerous, countless studies show support for decreased cortisol levels as a response to regular meditation practice, improved memory and learning capacity, and beneficial changes in brain areas linked to our mood and our arousal states and psychological well-being, as well as a reduction in reported experience of stress and anxiety. Meditation fosters our ability to be non-reactive, and it decreases our monkey mind activity, or that kind of mental chatter or reactive part of our mind. We start to become able more to operate from that part of our mind that remains discerning and level, rather than that habitual reactive piece. And as mentioned before, meditation and breath are the bridge, acts as the bridge between the subconscious and the conscious mind. So we can start to bring to light through these practices thinking patterns and ways of being that might have been previously unconscious or unknown to us, so that once they enter the realm of the conscious sphere, that's where we can start to work with them and shift them. And yoga tells us that meditation is really how we become increasingly in touch with who and what we are in essence underneath fluctuating experience. That piece of us that is the steady experiencer, that is absolute and remains untouched by whatever we're experiencing out in the world. And so our yoga practice is not only what we do in the 60 or 90 minutes that we're practicing on the mat, but it's also the way that we're carrying ourselves out through the world and in our lives. And we can take these practices and these mindsets out no matter what we're doing. So off the mat, we want to focus on stillness. We need to give our nervous system downtime. The motion of the body leads to motion of the mind, and stillness isn't always comfortable because it's something that we honestly rarely access. Even when we're resting, we're often reading a book or listening to music, which isn't a bad thing, but we also need time to just be, because it's in that absolute space that needs and emotions that gonna get swept up in the world that surrounds us can kind of become apparent to us. And just as applying the brakes to a fast-moving vehicle takes a little bit of force and momentum behind it, finding real time and the capacity to be still takes some work. It doesn't come naturally a lot of the time, and it can be uncomfortable. You will probably notice in practicing just being, kind of the inclination to move or to shift, to engage in something, even to look around. But as we do it more and more over time, it not only becomes more natural, but it becomes something that really feels quite nourishing and becomes something that's, so important to our self-awareness and to our self-relationship. So it really does evolve as we continue to practice it, but we do need that repeated exposure to it to get to that point. And I think routine is something that is so, so important to have. There are pieces of each and every day that are always going to be unknown and that are always going to bring about, wonderful things and also kind of shitty things and, unexpected and, chaos and also ease. There's always going to be unknowns in each and every day, and that's beautiful. But I also think that there's really something to be said for having anchors in your day, anchors of steadiness and of routine, something that is familiar and comfortable and kind of, just a piece of you. And so for me, one of the best sources of steadiness that I have is a morning practice. And, morning practice does not need to be a full yoga practice. I think that sitting for 10 to 15 minutes and just breathing or stretching or being in your body can be so meaningful if you can start your day that way. I think that, having a morning ritual, 30 minutes, you have the time, 60 if that's something that you're able to do, where you just do the same thing each day, to start or end your day, I think, really, on a note that's just yours. No electronics, no other humans, a time where you're just really focusing on cultivating a relationship with yourself. If you can do that each and every day, that is such a game changer. I think this world, never will stop moving and shifting, but we can build steadiness and stability from the inside out. And that's something that nobody can take away from us, and that we can carry into each and everything we do. And this is just a last little quote from the lovely and incredible human that is Karina Guthrie. And it's really lovely. It's a nice note to end on. And take a moment now to notice your body. If you're quiet, you'll notice that it's filled with sensation. For as long as you're aware of that sensation, your thoughts will disappear. And so too will the experience of raw aliveness that the sensation gives rise to. Where do your thoughts go when you're focused on your body? Where does your body go when you're preoccupied with thought? What is the role of relaxation in each? Okay, so that's what I've got for you guys. And this is one of those things that I haven't really said out loud too many times, but this is my last class at the practice will be on Saturday, July 27th. It'll be a restorative class, and all proceeds will be going to Bali's Street Moms Project, which is a really wonderful local organization that helps local families and moms with supporting kids and helping them access resources and education, and a really beautiful organization that has a really wonderful mission. And so if you are around on Saturday at 4 p.m., I would love to see you and to have you.